how to think about risk so that you're smarter, safer, better looking. I'm Matt Robison. It's Financial Life Planning with my co-host, our resident expert, Mike Morton. Mike, you want to make a point to people that you think will make them feel better. Seriously,
I want you to feel great. Yeah,
I want to feel great too. That would be a great beginning to a show. It's like, I want to make you feel terrible. It's like, click, next show.
Yeah, next show. This one's not for me, not today.
Yeah. You seriously think that a slight twist in how people think about one thing can relieve a lot of anxiety that we all tend to feel about finances?
And make you better looking, Matt. Don't forget that. That was your promise at the outset.
That is an uphill climb, but I will let's put it this way. Aim for the stars, right? I might land on the moon or whatever that horrible expression is. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to make me better looking, but if you can alleviate some of my anxiety, I'll be thrilled.
Tall order. Yeah, so the whole reason for this episode is that we often conflate or mix up risk with volatility, with how I feel anxious or stressed about my money. Because we tune into our investments and we see them going up, which is great, and then we see them going down, which is not so great, and we really start to feel anxious, especially if we get into some kind of recession or something like that. Not that we're anywhere close to one of those necessarily. I have no idea what's coming next. But, the last one was a few years ago, and we really did not feel good as you see your money lose 5%, 10%, 15%. And that money going down in value makes us feel really stressed and anxious. And we think of that as risk, the risk of investing in stocks that we know go up and down. And so today's episode is really trying to reframe a little bit of that so that, when the ups and downs happen, you don't have to feel as anxious about it.
So people call me and say, boy, this is really bad. My investments are down. I just looked. And maybe I'm the worst person to do this topic with because I've got a great solution. I stick my head deep in the sand because I don't look that often. I just try not to look. And maybe that's a good thing. All right. So let's do the bottom line up front. How do your clients tend to think about things, and how do you give them that magic relief moment where you say, all right, think about it like this and you'll feel better?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny you say that. Usually with my clients, we'll work on projecting the future. So they might be anxious about their goals, right? Hey, I want to retire at this age, or I have, college costs. Are we going to have enough? I'm not sure where to save my money, those kinds of things. And so we'll often do projections into the future, right? 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Are you going to run out of money? You're going to work for a while and then you're going to retire and spend money. Are you going to run out of money? And the real relief, Matt, is when you show them the numbers, all the statistics, and it's like, no, you guys will be great. There's, very little chance you're going to run out of money. We'll know it way in advance. We can make correctional steps if we need to, but the models say you are going to be fine and going to be able to meet your goals. And that's when people are like, that feels so good, because we're unlike you, who sticks your head in the sand. First of all, this is like our episode last time, hiding behind a rock. That's a terrible idea. Do not stick your head
It's a terrible
into
idea.
the sand.
Is it true that ostriches actually do that? Or is that one of those, you learned it when you were a kid, but it's sort of the same way you learned about quicksand. It's like, no, quicksand doesn't really like that. Ostriches don't stick heads in the, I don't know, like why, if you stick your head in the sand, you're going to die in 30 seconds. That's a bad idea.
Well, you won't run out of money then.
That's right. Actually, if you're afraid of something coming at you and it's going to arrive after 30 seconds, then you're worse off sticking your head in the sand, because that's the maximum that I can hold my breath.
That's right. So don't put your head in the sand. But in this case, it's so true. It's like, looking once a year is way better for you, because it's all about how tuned in you are to, this number, right? Your investments, your 401k, whatever it is. And especially when you reach thresholds, Matt, it's like, oh man, I got above $1 million. I'm on my way to saving and investing and retiring when I want to. And then that threshold of $1 million, maybe it goes down by 5 or 10%. You're like, ooh, man, you just don't feel good. Like I had $1 million, now it's 900,000 because it's on the way down. So that's where thinking about time frames, really makes a big difference.
That resonates with me. not to give away too much of a family member's financial situation, but my mother calls me from time to say, my investments have gone down. She calls for other reasons too. She wants to talk to the grandkids, but she'll mention along the way exactly what you said a minute ago. My investments have gone down, and some version of this feels terrible. And I understand in her situation, because she's retired, that that's where the time frame makes sense to me, because she needs the money now. So if you're me, it's awfully glib and uncaring as a son to say, oh, pshaw, don't worry, because I still have time. And, it's like, that's where time frame comes in. And that's where I go, by the way, to your other strategy. Years ago, when my mom retired, I did a little spreadsheet, as I am wont to do, and I did a little projection. Here is what you have, and here are some very conservative assumptions about growth, and here's where you will be each year based on the following budget. And she opened it up, and a year or so ago, it had turned out to be unbelievably accurate. Yes, I'm patting myself on the back. Yeah, great.
Try not to strain yourself there, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, my poor shoulder. That's what I go to, is the same thing you go to with your clients, which is like, well, we've looked at this, and yep, there's some volatility, but this has proved to be very accurate, and we've shown that you are going to be fine. But that doesn't totally alleviate it either. And so I guess I go back to, I'm sold on your idea that the time frame is really the source of the anxiety, and trying to play with that the way Christopher Nolan does our perceptions of time is the key to alleviating that anxiety. That was the best article you and I ever shared with each other. There was this great, oh my gosh, there's such a good Google. If you just Google BROM, there was this insider expose on the way Brom had overtaken Hollywood sound effects and scoring. And it's like, if you listen, you can't unhear it once it's been pointed out to you. It's most evident in the Christopher Nolan movies, especially in Inception. That movie has a soundtrack. There's a song. I can picture it in like that final scene where the top is spinning. Like there is music, but most of the time in Inception, it's just going, bro. It's amazing. And there's this whole article about like, how did that happen? Why are we hearing that in so many movies these days? It's so good. Anyway,
I gotta check it out.
Where were we before
time frames?
I got time frames. Christopher Nolan.
Time frames. One of the things I want to talk about is what this podcast, with busy parents and kids and kind of having a long time frame to retirement. But you brought up people that are in retirement. And there are two things I want to highlight here. One, for everybody that's listening, we do the show and we reiterate a lot of topics because they're worth hearing over and over again, not because you've forgotten them, but because emotionally...
Speak for yourself.
Because Matt's forgotten them.
Yeah. Where are we?
Where are we doing? It's because emotionally we get off track. I mean, we'll be feeling really great. We all had this. We're feeling really great. And then later in the day, you start ruminating about that project or whatever it is. And you're like, oh man, I know I have a lot to do, or I'm not feeling so good. And so we forget. So that's why it's a good reminder, like your spreadsheet or talking, to your mom, everything's good. Like so many of my clients, they leave feeling, conversations very confident, which is great. That's the goal, But then they'll come back and be kind of anxious, right? A month later, a few months later, whatever it is, because even though it was only a couple of months, right? And then we got to kind of go through it again. Oh yeah, we're still fine. I know there's volatility and the market's done this or whatever, but you're still set up for success. People just love hearing that and seeing it and reiterating it. So that's one comment. Keep coming back. That's just being human. It's fine. You're going to get anxious, and even though the facts have not changed materially. The other thing I want to say, so retirement, here's the way we do it, Matt. We have 3 buckets, and they're time buckets. All right. So if you had the $1 million, I'm retired, I got $1 million. I'm going to put it into 3 buckets. One is for the next 1 to 2 years, you hold cash. Okay. Because you're going to spend it this year, 2024. You're going to spend $50,000. I want you to have the $50,000, put it in your bank account, earn the 2%, 5%, whatever you can get in the bank account. It's not going to go down, and you're going to spend it this year. The second bucket is called an income bucket. And that's for the following 1 to 7 years. All right. So usually about 5 years. And we hold 5 years of your $1 million in bonds. Okay. And when I say 5 years, that means 5 years of expenses. So $50,000 a year. So 50,000 times 5, so we have $250,000 of dollars in bonds. Okay. They're relatively safe. We can get 5, 6, 7%, maybe, 3, 4, 5%, whatever it is. And that's the second time frame. The final buckets for growth, anything that's for 5 to 7 to 8 years and further, we can hold in stocks. And we know they're going to be volatile and go up or down. The whole reason for this bucket strategy, all right, so we got 3 buckets. And the whole reason is to make you feel confident about the plan. If your investments, those stocks go down, you have 7 years of spending. You got a couple in cash and another 4 or 5 in bonds. And you have 7 years of spending before you have to touch those the stock funds that have gone down by 30%. Oh my gosh, they've gone down by 30%. We're in a big recession. You got 7 years to weather the storm. And that's a long, long time. Think 7 years ago, where were you, right? That's a long time. So that's why we have 3 buckets, and they're all time-based.
That's super helpful because, again, and just to use my mom as an example, when this happens, which it does from time to time, to be clear, it is definitely rational. If you are in retirement and you have more of your funds that you need sooner, it's rational to be more attuned to the ups and downs of what you have available. I get that. I totally do. I agree with it. And yet there's still the buckets. There's still in retirement these different timeframes that you're working with. And so she has worked with a good financial advisor. She has a strategy. It is attuned to where she is. She's in retirement. And so she does have those funds that are in lower volatility places. They're pretty locked in there. There is some money that's still in the market, and that is for use further out. And so there is still that time to recover. And I say that in part because one of my, seminal financial experiences was right at the crash that we had with the recent pandemic crash in the stock market. It was the last time I went to the gym with a friend. Since then, I've just been working out in my basement. So I go to the gym with a friend of mine and we're working out. And he's like, we're right in the middle of crushing a set, whatever it is. And he bails out on me. He's like, no, I have to take this call. It's my broker. I'm like, oh, that's a lame excuse. So anyway, he steps out for 15 minutes while I continue, crushing my quads or whatever it is, and comes back in and he says, yeah, man, like the market's about to go down, all this COVID stuff. And I'm pulling out of the market. Like, okay, all right. I'm not going to tell anyone else what to do. I didn't touch a thing, right? 2 years later, we're in exactly the same place. Like the market went down, it recovered. Now, that's not always the case when the market goes down, but historically, it is always the case over time that it comes back. And you've cited the statistics. I'm gonna mess it up. What is the 40-year? What's the worst you're gonna do? Is it like 9%? Like it's some insane number. So the point is, that that's going to happen, and most of the time, it's going to happen within a few years. I guess my point is just that even if you're in retirement, you've still got buckets. You've still got a portion of your money that's for that longer time horizon. So even if things are going down now, there is an excellent chance that they're going to work their way back up by the time you need the money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you can look at the average time frames of recessions. You mentioned 2 years later, and that's pretty quick recovery, but the average is like 4 to 5 years. And that's why we hold sort of 7 years, right? If the average is 4 to 5 for that stock market to come back up. The other reason, and you can say, well, listen, Mike, I get it. You got like a couple years in cash, a few years in bonds, and the rest in stocks. Well, that's just maybe a 60-40 classic portfolio. Sure. At the end of the day, obviously, you can break down the total amount of dollars into cash, bonds, stocks, and come up with the percentages, right? But mentally, trust me, when you're talking to people who are retired and they can see I got my war chest of cash and bonds to cover 7 years of spending, I got this big war chest ready to go in case the market crashes. That's a way different feeling than saying I've got 30% in cash and bonds. Like, what does that mean? They're like, no, I have $400,000 of spending ready to go in case the market crashes. That's a really good way of thinking about it.
I feel almost obligated to address the put your money in a mattress, this scenario, which I don't think we have to, but it's sort of like this kind of topic. You're almost, I don't know, I think it's in the contract somewhere. This is also one of those things like putting your head in the sand, or I don't think it's real. I don't think people actually put money under their mattresses. Maybe they did. Do your clients do this? Does anyone put their money under a mattress?
I wish I could find some money under my mattress.
I find a 20 in my jeans once in a while.
I know. It's awesome.
But that's because I never wear jeans. Good. Oh, it is the best. But like this is literally, I hate jeans. I think jeans are terrible. I think they were invented as a joke. Like someone was punking us, like Lee Denim or whoever invented jeans. And actually, the guy was Levi, right? Like, didn't Levi Strauss invent?
Is this the same as your Wild West? Wasn't really like the Wild West?
Yeah, Levi Strauss truly did. And Joe Wrangler also. Anyway, the point is, I wear jeans so seldom that if I ever have cash, which I don't anymore, I might stuff it into that little tiny you can't get into a jeans pocket, and it's likely to stay there till the end of time.
What is that little pocket for?
Oh, there is a reason for it. I looked it up once. It was one of those clickbaity things that I actually clicked on, and I was told how I could regrow my hair. They explained, here's what the little pocket is for. Do I remember it? No, I didn't retain it. They also explained what that little metal button is for.
Metal button. Yeah, what's that?
All right.
Come on, Matt. Do some quick Google research. And while I tell the listeners why you don't want to put money under your mattress. So we all know about inflation, which is why you don't want to literally hold dollar bills like that 20 in Matt's pocket because we all remember how much a pack of gum was, like 5 cents when we were growing up, and now it's like $50. If my kids need a pack of gum, hey, Dad, I need a 20. Go to get some gum. Here's a great chart for you, and we'll put this in the show notes and stuff as well. This was 200 years of returns. All right, so if we just, if we had $1 to invest 200 years ago, and we can look at what it would be if we held cash, if we held bonds, or we held stocks. All right, $1 invested. All right, now if you just held cash, if you literally had that dollar bill today, well, actually, it would probably be worth quite a bit because it's like, it's like stamp collections. Yeah. But it would be 0.04, it'd be 4 cents. 4 cents is how much that dollar can now buy. So this is what we call purchasing power. Real returns. What can you actually buy with your dollar? So obviously you did not want to hold just that dollar. If you put that $1 into bonds, you would have $1,700. $1 turns into $1,700. That's pretty good over 200 years. But stocks, put $1 in stocks, $1.6 million. 1.6, there's like 2 extra zeros between bonds and stocks. And this is why any kind of long-term average, you want to be holding stocks over bonds. I'll give you another more recent, if you look at the last 40 years, all right? So what kinds of returns can we get? Again, we've said if it's in the short term and you need that money, yeah, you want to be holding either some cash or some bonds because a yearly return for bonds might be minus 5 or 10% up to 10%. All right. So you could lose 10% of your money. We had that very recently. It's usually not that high, actually. But you could lose 10% or gain 10% in 1 year. So not that volatile, 10% of your money. But you're not getting much of a return, only an average of like 3-4%, over time. But if you look at stocks, in the short term, we do not want to put money there. If you need that money in 1 year, you could lose up to 50% of your money. Now, you might gain 50%, but you don't want to do that in 1 year. But when you're talking about 30 or 40 years, the past 30 or 40 years, the average is 12%. All right. And so that's why we do stocks for the long run. Anything more than, say, 5 or 10 years, go towards the stocks. Anything less than 5 or 10 years, when you need that money, go towards the cash and bonds.
This portion of the podcast was brought to you by math. Math. Do you want to have a job in the future? Try math. It's useful. All right. I also use that, the actual serious, informative, useful portion of the podcast to do something totally unuseful and to look up. Yes, by the way, I was not wrong. Levi Strauss did invent the modern blue jean design. And in 1873, he came up with a design for that little teeny tiny pocket. Would you like to guess what it was for?
1873. What do they need then? Maybe, for your little bit of tobacco.
That's a good guess. No, it turns out that he kept a little fairy in there. It was for pocket watches. During the gold rush, a lot of prospectors had those watches on a chain, and you wanted to keep it in a separate pocket so it wouldn't smash against the other things you keep in your jeans pocket. Keeping things in your jeans pocket is insane because jeans pockets smush whatever you have in there up against your leg and give you cramps. Don't put your wallet in your jeans pocket. The last place you put, I don't understand people who put it in their back pocket. Oh, yeah. Like you're going to sit on this thing that is smushed up against your buttock. I don't get it.
It's now, Matt, digital wallets and Bitcoin. Go back and listen to the episode.
Bitcoin. There it is. The answer on the little button, though, is very uninteresting. It's just a rivet. It's just to make the pocket stronger.
That was it. Oh, well.
So, but that was a good way to cover the fact that you don't put money under the mattress. Like, right. And it's that old thing, like the biggest risk is not to take one. And I mean, it does get to, you and I were chatting a little bit.
Actually, let me pause on that for one sec. Go. The biggest risk is not to take one is absolutely the case when it comes to long-term investing. And when we say the word risk, let's use volatility. All right. The biggest risk is not going in and accepting the volatility of the stock market for the long run and trying to play it safe by putting money under the mattress or keeping it in the bank account or just going with super safe U.S. Treasury bonds. If you have a time horizon for some money you want to spend in 10, 20, 30 years, the biggest risk is not putting it into the stock market and losing purchasing power.
Well, you have almost a 100% probability that you won't have as much money as you thought you had if you put it under the mattress. Think about it that way, right? In the long run, you have a 100% probability of death, and you have a 100% probability of losing your money if you don't accept the volatility of other kinds of investment. Yeah,
especially if you have kids and they find it under the mattress, you're definitely losing that money.
100% probability. 100%. But then if they put it under their mattress, they also face that.
That's right.
That long-term probability. I do think that it's useful in that it is, I don't think we're going to get rid of people's anxiety. For all the people out there who are identifying more with the call my mom made, or even my friend, working out and saying, I got to pull out of the market. I don't think we're like trying to shame people about those feelings. Like, that's very real. This is real stuff. It's just, you do have math, our sponsor math, like it should make people feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Emotions are great. Congratulations. You're human.
Yeah.
So that's great. And as I said before, you're going to have them. They're going to, even if as confident as you are now, you're going to, some of that's going to creep in over time, especially when you log in and see the numbers, and especially when you're reading the news and it's all terrible. It's going to happen. So it's going to be there, but just revisit your goals and what you're striving for and making sure you're taking the appropriate steps to meet those goals.
All right. I can't think of a better way to top that. I think we should wrap up there with one final thought.
Wrong.
All right. For Mike Morton, I'm Matt Robison. We will see you next time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.